Hello and welcome to another episode of MS Talks. Today we dive into topics Dubai and the Middle East have been focusing on for several years and topics that are just about to grow. We dive into startups, innovation, workspaces, incubations, accelerators, and more with Hans Christensen, the Vice President of the Biotechnology Entrepreneur Campus, which is the largest and the most important tech hub in the region. Hey Hans, how you doing?
Hey, good. And yourself?
All good. Thank you so much. Must be a whirlwind of a year for you and everything that you look into. The pandemic, the Abraham Accord, Israel, Expo 2020, working from home, the boom in startups, the economy. Exciting time?
Absolutely. I think it's exciting, changing time. This is actually the times where the entrepreneurs can show what they can do, that they are actually quite resilient in the way that they can pivot and adapt to whatever challenges you throw at them. The economic times were not exactly very, very good before COVID, and then COVID came. And adapting to all these different things has really been a challenge. But I think we have seen that the entrepreneurs have lived up to the challenge. And yes, some didn't make it, but others have thrived, which is really interesting.
Yeah. And I think we see that worldwide. We see that with IPOs, we see that with startups coming out. I mean, you lead the largest and the most impactful tech hub in the region. How has the Dtec and its members coped up with the pandemic? I mean, I know that it's a common workspace, but how's 2021 looking? There's Israel, big waves coming from Israel as well. There's Expo 2020 coming in as well. So how's 2021 looking for Dtec and its members?
So whereas 2020, as we just mentioned, fraught with a lot of challenges, but nevertheless a quite positive year for co-working spaces in general, because the standard office space is now suddenly not so interesting anymore. Yeah. As a lot of companies have and employees have been asked to work from home. Now, there has been a certain overflow effect to the co-working spaces, where people have said, well, you know what, I'm only going to use an office once a week or twice a week, so a co-working space is better for me. So we have seen quite a lot of interest from existing companies just to have a few workers in our space. The second thing is, and I think this trend will continue into 2021. As a matter of fact, I expect with 2021 and Expo coming next year that this will be a strong trend, and we hope definitely we're going to fill up our second Dtec space, which is another 5,600 square meters.
Oh, wow.
Which is already being filled up as we speak. Now, I also congratulate the Abraham Accord because I see that we are going to be networking with the Israeli entrepreneurial market or ecosystem, which is quite a lot bigger than ours and in certain aspects more mature. So we have already seen at GITEX there has been a huge influx of Israeli investors. Some of them are actually looking for money here, so they're not going to bring money, but some will also bring money. And there will be hopefully a nice exchange of deal flow between the countries. And as you know, this is something that is always good for an ecosystem.
It is.
There's just more life, more to choose between. And so I see 2021 as a year where we're going to come out even stronger than we are coming out this year. And especially for entrepreneurs and inventors and investors, it's going to be a very interesting year.
Now, things have progressed. I mean, from, as you mentioned about Israel, there's big waves coming, big startups coming in from Saudi as well, from Egypt as well. I mean, there's definitely a startup or a seed fund or something or the other happening from Egypt on a daily basis, and definitely, as you said, expo funds, all of this will definitely make 2021. I think everyone comes out stronger from something like this. Economies have always boomed after a crisis, and we're hoping that this trend continues after the pandemic as well. Moving on to my next point. You're based in DSO. We're based in DSO, right? I can see your tower from my office right here. Yet here we are. We're doing this talk on Zoom. Right. And it's not just us. I mean, economies went online, right? I mean, with the new fresh lockdowns announced in Europe as recently as yesterday, millions will still be working from home for the next couple of weeks or months. Thousands of organizations have implemented these changes permanently. Google just announced that you don't have to come back in June. That's been pushed on to September 2021. Dtec being a co-working space, I mean, how has Dtec adopted to these changing behaviors and these needs, and where do you see this work culture progressing? Because I do not see this as a temporary change, and as you also mentioned that offices have moved on to virtual spaces. So where do you see this work culture progressing towards in the long term future? I'm not just talking about the next year, but as a long term change.
Yeah, so I actually think the market in Dubai is already entering with big steps a transition phase where the onshore, offshore question is going to be is more and more muddied. That means that it's not. It's opening up, I would say, and what we see is that more and more competition is coming our way from neighboring countries, which means that we need to up the game in terms of attractiveness, being the most attractive spot for foreigners to place their money, FDI, and to set up their business. Now, we have worked hard on this year and last year, but I think we need to get even better. I believe that it should be possible to set up a business within a few minutes through an app. And secondly, there should not be and I think the costs in getting this done should be a cost which is competitive and competitive in the market, and which doesn't turn people away from setting up their business. The bulk of the FDI will come later on. It shouldn't be all put into company setup.
Into the initial phase, yes.
Yes, exactly, which is not happening right now. But I think this is something you can continuously work on and make it as easy as possible for people to start here in Dubai. And we are definitely going to work as a tech hub in making the transition from one country to the next as easy as possible with programs. We call them soft landing programs. So that you can very quickly find your way around in the country, set up your legal structure, and hire the talented people, and get off the ground as smoothly as possible.
At the name, to be honest, my next question was about everything that you just highlighted right now, about how UAE and Dtec are making it look more attractive to people. I think you've already answered that question, but one thing that I wanted to check is, I'm sure these were conversations that were already going on before the pandemic. Did the pandemic change any of these strategies of yours? I mean, did it make you realize something that you did not know? Did it make you push for something that you potentially had had it planned for the next 2-3 years, perhaps, that you had to push through in just a few months, or did you have to pivot completely into a different direction?
I mean, if you can talk about positive effects from such an otherwise very tragic year with deaths and sickness and so on, yes, one positive thing is that we realize that it is actually possible to go completely digital and work from home and so on, and reduce the congestion on the Dubai streets a bit, reduce the congestion in the air. Although I'm sure the airlines would be very happy if the traffic started going up again, which I no doubt they will next year. So I think there was several very positive things that came out. Especially if you see in our space, just talking about our space, is that health tech obviously has become more of a talking point. Anything that has to do with sustainability, impact, investment, environment, and general concern for the future, these ventures that are into that tend to fare better than let's say the other ventures that were struggling this year. We saw that there was a very positive trend in e-commerce, obviously, which I think will actually continue. It's not just a blip; it will actually continue.
It's all about getting used to it once. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, just to give you an example from my own personal life, there is no week that's passing without my son coming and asking me for something on Amazon or some of the other big sites where he found a gadget that he needs for. He's 13, so he's building an airplane, so he needs parts for this airplane, and he can find it on the internet, and you can order it on the internet. So this
and
is
absolutely, and once you realize the ease of things on the digital world, yes, there's that legacy, there's that personal involvement when you're actually going into the store and getting things done. But once you find that comfortability, after a hard day of work, after in the traffic now, you just don't mind just ordering it a click away, and you know that it's just going to come and deliver. You mentioned about health tech as well. I believe ed tech was something big as well that came out this year. Everyone's talking about education, big waves in startups in education. They all went public, huge money being invested. This leads to my last question right now, and that's about funding. As you mentioned, at the start of this conversation, you mentioned about a couple of startups did well this year. A couple of them unfortunately did not. And yes, the idea is at the backbone of everything. What the exact startup is believes in. But I believe without the right funding, there are so many startups who are never able to exploit their complete potential. And the pandemic saw billions being invested in tech startups worldwide. I mean, we saw Airbnb last week as well. We saw DoorDash last week, and record IPOs that honestly I did not imagine them reaching these levels. But here we are. We're talking about startups being funded massively. I mean, where do you see? Let's talk about local grown startups now. Let's talk about startups that potentially, inshallah, will reach those heights. But where do you see startup funding progressing towards? And what's your take on guiding startups and the younger generation towards growth and towards funding?
So using the numbers from Magnet, which is now becoming increasingly the trusted source of this kind of information, which is also a startup. And he's done extremely well, I think. Now, his numbers are saying that although there are fewer deals, there were more sizable deals this year. So, which was very, very comforting to see that investors, despite COVID coming, still deployed money, and which I think is the right way to do. You should not just stop. And I think this trend will continue because the ecosystem is growing, and as the ecosystem is growing, that means opportunities are there, and where there are opportunities, the venture capitalists usually follow suit. Now, with the influx of about 100, 200 investors from Israel that are sophisticated investors that have invested for years in startups, I'm sure they're going to find a few interesting startups to invest in here. So that's the good news for the local startups. Now suddenly there's more visibility from that market, which is the most important ecosystem in this region. So with the increased amount of VC going around, the exchange of deal flow here and there, Dubai is just looking more attractive from an investment point of view. And so I don't think it will slow down. I think it will increase. And of course, with the Expo 2021, that's going to be like a booster for investments. It's just going to be a melting pot next year for technology and investment opportunities. So I think we are actually looking at a very interesting year in terms of investment going forward. I want to add a caveat here, and that is that as we get more sophisticated, experienced investors investing in our area, they will probably want to see the startups up their game, and they're looking for really top-notch startups. So unless the startup has already increased their product and whatnot, then it's probably a good time to do so that when opportunity strikes, you are ready to receive funding.
No, absolutely. I think everything that you've highlighted just makes everyone believe that yes, 2021 definitely looks stronger, and I think 2020 could potentially be one of those years that, a few years down the line, we'd be like, we needed something like this for us to move into this direction. Otherwise, maybe it would have taken us X more years to actually move into that direction. Well, I think we've already passed our time. We can always do these talks once again. Hopefully, I can just come down and visit you down the road.
You're so welcome.
And do this physically. Thank you so much, Hans, once again. Anything else that you'd like to potentially announce? Anything cooking right now, within Dtec? Anything that you'd like to announce to the people that be watching the show?
Just that Dtec is doing really, really well. People are returning to their seats, so to speak. And it's comforting to see that life is returning to normality. And with our new center, I just welcome anyone to come and try it out. And our new restaurant, One Bite, play on words, of course. That you should try some of the food there as well. It's really a soul food. So
I'm definitely coming for a bite over there and a coffee, and potentially catching up with you as well physically. Well, pleasure having you with us, Hans. Hopefully we'll do this once again, and thank you so much once again for your time.
Thank you.